What we're going to do now is we're going to do the question and answer part of the conference. We've had so many great speakers, we've had so much information, that what I'd like you to do now is think about all those questions that you would really like to ask and really like answered. And what we've got is we've got just under an hour to get through that. So I'm going to go and take my space back up on the stage. At the end here, if I could, we need two microphones. We have one microphone up here, I'm afraid. We have one microphone up here. I'm going to hand Laurie the other microphone. And if Laurie, if you could go around and ask people the questions, then they will be able to hand them the microphone. And we will do our best to pass the microphone along. And there we go. And then we'll go from there. Okay, is everybody ready? Everybody okay? Everybody settled? This is the last session we're really going to go through for the conference. So I'd like you to put your best foot forward, put your thinking cap on, and really challenge us with some really in-depth, interesting questions. If I could ask the panel, please, to moderate your answers and keep them fairly short. So yeah, I'm looking at you, Bill. So keep the answers fairly short, and if more than one person wants to answer the question, please pass the microphone. All right, so we'll start there.
Who's first?
If you want to ask a question of a particular person, please state the name of the person you'd like to ask a question of. I'm Rum, this is Carol, this is Bill, this is Kathleen, and this is Tina from Townsville on the end, okay? You are now Tina from Townsville. Okay? So please, if you want to ask the panel, just say panel general.
Okay, panel general. Mine's just a bit general in terms of the first thing we covered, but I was just wondering, I don't know if it applies to many people, but I was wanting to get advice on what's the best piece of information that could give someone who's recently entered local government and as a first job or as just the first sort of serious career move to establish themselves in the organisation and in local government as a whole.
My quick answer to that would be to say to them there are more opportunities in local government that you can shake a stick at. You can have 7 careers in local government and never change organisation. So I'd say to that person, don't necessarily listen to the old timers who've been there a long time. That's not by age, that's by those who are stuck in a negative culture. But to listen to the new people and then to really establish their own culture and make the opportunity their own.
Another thing I would add to that, local government's no different to any other industry, except that it is far more diverse than any other industry. All you really need to do is be professional and passionate about what you do and get it into self-development. So invest in yourself and be professional, and you can go wherever you want to go.
Okay, from my point of view, you're in the right position, customer service. I started on a counter. I was the junior rates clerk under 21. And yes, you deal with the customer, you get it, you know the processes, and you're able to sort stuff out as you go on.
Tina, did you want to comment on that?
I can only see the poll, so I'm going to guess. Sorry, who was that posted? Was it Talia?
Yes, it is.
Talia, I have my eye on you already. Not figuratively speaking, but there's some skill, talent, and there's some base. And when you're passionate, those are the types of people that I look for. I can develop you into lots of different things, but what I look for is passion. So I'm going to go and hunt you down and talk to you later, Talia. We'll work out a plan.
Boss, all right? Okay.
Hi, yeah, I have a question for Bill and Kathleen. We recently implemented a new system for curbside collections, and we found that we had to sell the online booking service to the customers. I was just interested to find out how you sold your amalgamation to your ratepayers during your early days.
I would have to be honest with you and say we didn't sell it to the ratepayers. We were behind that carriage that was running away, given that it was being driven by the state and it was appalling to the local politicians. Realistically, there was nothing for us to sell. That was happening in the world in front of it. So the amalgamation wasn't ours to sell. What was ours to sell thereafter was to give them confidence that business would continue.
What we find, and what anyone will find in amalgamation, is that people identify very strongly with their local community, and you really do owe it to them to actually give them the best you can out of an amalgamation. Don't wallow in, oh my God, we've been amalgamated, the world is falling. you've actually got to get in there and remember virtually that every dollar you're spending is coming out of one of those ratepayers' pockets. And yeah, so there is nothing really to sell except for good service at the end of the day, and always have that customer at the front of your mind, that, you know, that process at the front counter, the process on the phone, whatever it is, give them consistency and give them continuity as best as you can, no matter what is happening out the back.
If I can add to that, sales is not a dirty word. I know that it's a very difficult thing in local government. You say the word sell in local government, people go, we're not in private practice, we don't do that. But when we're talking about talking to the community and talking to the customer, it's not our job to sell. We're on the operational side. It is the councillor's job to sell. And there's a separation of church and state. It's not for us to do that. What we can do though is we can arm the councillors with all the information that they will need to sell something to the community. And it's very, very important that they have that information, because if you want the councillors' support, they will need the support of the community, because first of all, in their mind, they're in a popularity contest. So therefore, arming the councillors with information is the best way to sell things from our point of view, who are internal, organisational.
Okay, next question here.
Okay, this question's for Rum, please. Rum, yesterday we touched on attracting males to a customer-centric team, and I recently advertised a full-time customer service officer role. In the Hills, I got over 480 applicants, and because of the volume of applicants, I conducted a phone interview to begin with. And one of my candidates was outstanding. He had exceptional qualifications and experience, but during the phone interview, the difference between this particular male candidate and a female candidate, the male's first question was, how much are you going to pay me? And the female's response was, I really want to give back to my community. So my question is, how do you get to the next stage? How do you actually get past that point where local government don't pay a lot? So this staff member or potential candidate is obviously looking for pay.
Okay, well, there's two of us who've got something to say about that. We've been known to argue once or twice. Okay, my answer to that would be, first and foremost, this. It's a myth that local government don't pay that well. It's not actually that true anymore. Local government pay just as well as anybody else in certain areas. You see, in the private sector, they've been cutting wages realistically for a very long time. Local government, you get things which are perks which make up your salary. But things have changed in the world, but not to the point where men aren't still more or less the breadwinner when we have a family. When a family comes along, a man's married, a woman's married, they're married, they have a family, often one person will choose to stay home for a few years to look after the children. And even though it's changing and there's more gender equality in that, it's still sort of 60-70% men. So for a man to ask about money is a very sensible, rational, reasonable thing to say. He's going to say, well, hang on, I'm in a job currently that pays me $45,000, $50,000 a year. I see this job here, which I may want to go for. I need to know straight up, is this job going to pay me as much or more so I can continue to support my family, or I can put myself in a position where I can support my family? So I think that it's not necessarily a dirty word or a terrible thing when a guy asks about a salary first up.
So should I be changing my interview questions?
Well, I think that maybe our response to the interview question, because it appears, this is a supposition that appears, that you're a little bit offended that they asked about money straight up.
When you've got two candidates and one says, I want to give to my community, and the other one says, how much are you going to pay me to come to work every day?
Yep. I would say they're both equally valid responses. And I don't think you should penalise someone who wants to know how much they're taking home in their paycheck.
Sorry, I'm going to disagree with Rob. I want to give back to my community is one of those fluffy bullshit answers that candidates give. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, No one is going to work for free, and if they really want to give back to their community for free, they can go and volunteer in the Senior Citizen Centre. Everyone is working for money. The bloke is just being more honest about it.
I didn't want to put it quite like that, but we were actually in agreement.
You can see why I'm so popular and why I had to get out of HR.
Thank you, Carol. Just one last part of that question is that typically we're moving towards a flexible workforce, and I find that to be flexible with my team members, I need to offer lots of part-time roles. Now, they typically don't attract males either. And that's the end of the question.
Can I take that on board because of this? In the team at Glen Iroh, one of the things that we've deliberately done to get a mixed workforce, and if you saw the video, it's a very mixed workforce. There are some full-time positions, some part-time positions, and some casual positions. We're aware that full-time positions are necessary and people want full-time positions, and they're highly sought after. Both male and female go for those roles. There are some part-time positions which both male and female go for. It tends to be the students, the male students, who want to take on the part-time roles that fits in around their studies, but some of the females as well. So I don't think it makes any difference on gender. You just need to make sure they're not all part-time roles, and it's also our attitude and the way that we sell it. If we're selling it as in terms of like, lots of part-time roles here, it's really nice, it fits in among school hours, and while on the break, I did check on a few websites for jobs, and I looked up customer service jobs in local government, and there's a couple of them there that say, perfect, fits in around school children. No man's going to apply for that. It's really not in his first thought. So I think that we need to be much more strategic and much more insightful when we write a job application. Bill, did you want to come in on that?
Not with any degree of staying within the bounds of what's appropriate.
Bill did make the point, Lisa, that if you put the salary on the ad, then the bloke doesn't have to ask that. But I'm in two minds about salary. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Can I also just say with this gender equality thing, New South Wales, Section 345, Local Government Act, you have to have an EEO plan. Right, so work with your HR department to say, I want to focus on this in my department. What are you going to do to help me? And I was saying to Rum earlier, one of the US management gurus that I love to bag, but I love his sayings, Stephen Covey, what gets measured gets done. So if you are measuring your performance in gender equality in your service department, it will get done. If you focus on it, it will get done, and it'll make HR look good as well.
Absolutely. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
It's a very, very important question, and thank you for asking it.
Who's next? Someone on this side, maybe?
I have another question.
Please go right ahead. This is your opportunity to ask questions. This is an interactive conference, interactive forums. There are no dumb questions. If you're thinking it, say it.
Thank you. I've got a lot out of this conference. This question's completely different, and I think probably Bill and Kathleen might be able to answer this one. How do you continuously grow your service within scope without reviewing the resources that go with that?
Okay, first of all, I guess the parameter that you put around that is within scope. We seriously don't have one.
No.
It is our job to better the outcomes for customers from our organisation. So we will do whatever that takes. We will partner with other departments, and we will partner with other departments who are more than capable of doing their own process mapping, and they just want to use us as a stakeholder. We will go into other departments who have no skills, and we will fully support them. So we work to whatever maximum capacity we've got to actually help them. We've also been recognised from the point of view we have a very good recruitment process. We use agencies to place with us because I won't waste my time with 400 applicants. So I get 5 applicants who are sent to me for interview, and probably 4 of them are suitable for the positions. Somebody else deals with all that for me. They come in, they're with us on contract with the agency. The moment they don't work out, they're gone. So we don't have that yet. Okay? Not so much an exit date, I suppose, but it's, yes, there's a standard there. So if we find we have to get in behind one of the departments and help them with something, we could allocate our staff to that. We could ramp up with casuals, bring them in, train them up, get them on, and we're moving. That's our role in the organisation, is to enable other departments.
If I can just agree with that along with Bill, anybody that starts at the service centres that I work with, they tend to start on contract, and once they prove themselves on contract, they may again get part-time, and then if positions then become available, then they may move, only if they're available, into full-time. But starting people directly into full-time, we decided that's not necessarily a good idea. We like to try before we buy.
It sounds like you've got more people than work though. When you put it like that, how do you measure how many people you need to provide a certain level of service?
So I'll answer this from the service centre perspective. Our service centres need a certain amount of people to run a county. It doesn't matter whether you've got one customer, 40 customers or 100 customers, you need X amount of staff. And we have peaks and we have troughs. In our troughs, we pick up projects. So our CSOs, we spoke about automating the property search process. We could only do that because the CSOs on the counter cleansed 100,000 property submissions. We do an awful lot of different work. We take on processing roles. We've taken on direct debits, animal amendments. We just, if a department is falling behind in something and we can see that, we step in and say, can we do this for you? We stay, by doing what we're doing, we're staying relevant, and we're also keeping our staff, we're pushing the processing function to the front of the organisation where it needs to be. So does that answer some of the things that so in other words, we don't really have a scope. We don't say, no, that's not customer
You're worried
service.
we've got fat in our
No,
organisation.
what I'm saying is
And we don't. How it works, if we get to if the dog people are having a problem, if the dog people are having a problem, we'll go in, help them solve the problem. The likelihood is we're getting calls because they've got a problem.
Yeah.
So we go in, we fix the problem, the calls stop. And so we get that push and pull all the time. It works really, really well.
Okay. Well, we've got a situation where we look at our average wait times, we look at our talk times, we look at the call volumes that come in. If our customer service team are off doing other things in different departments, that's going to impact on the customers that are waiting. Because I don't have an unlimited resource pool, I have to make sure that I've got enough people on the phones to answer those inquiries.
Can I put it to you this way? When we talk about first call resolution, the staff of a good service centre are not off in other departments answering the phone or doing other things. They are in the service centre. One of the things we've done at a number of councils I've worked with is we've sold the services of the service centre to the organisation. We've gone to, we'll go say animal management or local laws. We've gone to local laws. We said, how would you like to have your local laws officers doing their primary function, being out there in the community? And they've gone, that would be fantastic. But we've got to have someone here answering the phones. We've got a couple of admin people or this person answering the phones we keep back. And what we say is, you give us the knowledge and we'll answer all those calls for you. So what we do over time is we take that knowledge, we build a knowledge base. Like on the video you saw child and maternal knowledge base. And what we do there is we literally suck out all the information which has got to be done anyway, because as we've got an ageing population and people leave, local government is in danger of losing hundreds of years of intellectual property. So we're doing this for the organisation as an added bonus, but we're taking that information, putting it in the knowledge base inside customer service, and then they find that they're able to get on with their core job, and then we charge them. We charge them for the calls that we take. Sometimes it's done on a per call basis. And what that actually means is that the service centre is self-funding. It generates its own revenue for around the organisation because they're taking calls for other people and they're learning what goes on. So it's not like we've got a lot of people sitting around, we've got fat in the department. What it means is that we're gaining work for the department, so more and more and more and more and more calls come through the service centre that we're truly answering to first call resolution. Does that answer your question? Next question, please.
Kerry from Well Done. We've been looking at quality monitoring and we've been looking at core performance and things like that. Our branch manager, who was customer service manager at Coca-Cola, had a few ideas about this, and she wanted to go more to not so much marking how someone does a call, but looking at where they fail in a call, and that being part of a feedback process for training and what have you. And I went down to an LG Pro customer service conference last year, and there was quite a detailed presentation from, I think it was Southeast Water, and the guy was sort of getting up and saying they'd changed all the culture, they'd done this and the other, and he sort of was confirming what she said. They had, they were measuring the aggregates, which is the quantifiables for answering time across the network, but when it came to individuals, they weren't marking them out of 10. They were looking at supporting them. Now,
What's the question, Gary?
well, my question is, should we be marking people on quality?
Servo, this is yours.
From our point of view, the marks are just a measurable representation of what they're doing in the call. It's not necessarily to say you got 80% for that call, you bad person. It's not about that. It's identifying where they're falling down, what criteria that is not happening in that call, or what it is that needs in training, and then identifying that and going out there and saying, okay, you're not handling this very well, these types of calls very well. What is it that you don't understand about animal calls? Oh, no one's ever told me that we need to do X, Y, Z. Okay, now we have to sit you down, we need to retrain this person. So it's not a report card where you fail and you're out the door. It's a tool for learning and development, primarily. It can be used as a stick, but we want to use it as a carrot and get everyone on board, everyone trained up, and everyone on the same page.
That's not unlike what these other people have been saying to me. So when you say you mark them out of 100, do you use anything with the figure?
Well, the figure is basically, the figure does give them an overall visual aid to let them see how they rank against other people within the team. Not only are they sort of looking at their own statistics, it's easy to say you've improved, but it's also nice to say, well, you know, your call stats for the last 6 months were 86%, and we've sat down with you every month, we've explained to you where you failed, where you've done well, now you're at 92%. And it's just a number to give a measurement that they can readily understand and absorb, instead of how do we now measure 6 months without a result, a mark, or we're going to have to scale through millions and millions of comments, and then how do we get an aggregate on that as well. So it's just a number which places a value on what they do. It's not a
Trends.
Yeah, it's not an actual.
Can I just ask, you drew up on the slide sheet yesterday that
Craig, grab the microphone if you don't mind. And Servo.
Servo, hopefully you can explain, because I know myself and a couple of others at our table were curious. On your slide yesterday, you threw up that quality measured or was potentially a score of 60%. Can you just give us a scenario in how a call would go that you would then start allocating that 60%? And how do you then say, for example, lose points? Is it based on the way that the conversation goes? How does it all work?
Okay, well, the 60% actually pertains to the call monitoring process is worth 60% out of the whole 100% of their KPIs. So 60% is quality, 20% productivity, 10% adherence to schedule, etc., etc. So that gives them an overall mark out of 100 for basically all the KPIs that we want them to achieve. The quality gets marked out of 100, it gets scaled back down as an aggregate on 60% to give it a weight on what we deem appropriate of those behaviours that we want to encourage. So we want to encourage more quality, therefore it's worth 60% of the overall mark. Every element, as I saw in the moderation sheet, has a weight behind it.
Yeah, understand that, but what I'm trying to get at is, can you give me an example? So I ring up and I'm complaining about a particular issue, and the customer service officer then starts getting into a bit of a debate with the customer. So what sort of prompts would then get you to start then marking down from that 60%? So how does that process work?
Basically, using the elements, it would be simply referring to a quality management document which outlines what is the correct call procedure. If a person is being argumentative with the customer, then they would have no control of the call. It means that they've lost control of this call, they would fail that criteria, which would reduce their mark by 10%. Then if they're not providing the correct information and they've misled the customer or told them some rubbish just to get them off the phone because they're not happy with them, then they have failed to give concise and correct information. Once again, they lose marks for that. It's a back and forth towards the actual document and to actually the moderation sheet, which basically they overlap each other, and the criteria are described in the document as to what behaviours we expect from you on the phone.
That's the main thing.
Excellent.
And that's what you have
Hold on for one
identified.
moment. Laurie, if you'd like to move the microphone, that'd be great.
Hi, Serba. I really like that initiative because I struggle every day because every officer in my team handles calls and in keeping with some of their own nature, their personality, the way that their character. But I'm like you, and I believe there are fundamentals that need to be there with disregarding how you and your personality you interact. So even disregarding the score, which I think is so important to review anyway, I like the fact that you have identified your expectations of how you want your officers to do those calls. So I'm actually going to take what you presented back home with me. So I wouldn't even bother about, is it from Maitland Council, is it? So I wouldn't even bother about the scores. The fact that they're there, I think it's just a mechanism for looking at, well, if we, for helping assessment. But I think the main thing is identifying what your expectations are.
I think to bring a close to this particular question, as my friend here on my left would say, if you can't measure it, what is it? What's Kobe saying?
What gets measured gets done.
What gets measured gets done. And I think it's really important that we do measure people inside a service centre, and we do have criteria that they're laid down that they have to work within. I can't think of another service centre or another call centre in the private industry where they don't have these kind of measurements. These kind of measurements are standard. Because it hasn't been standard in local government, measurement in local government is new. It's not something that's been done across the board. Many other departments are not measured. They're not accountable. I mentioned the word accountability yesterday, and I'm going to mention the word accountability again today. Accountability is seriously, seriously important. And the measurement tools that Serbo's put in place and other people have put in place, that all strikes me as accountability, and I'd like to see it across the board. If I had my way, it'd be across the nation. Certainly.
We have the same type of thing in place, but what we have put into ours is what we call foundation skills and finesse skills. So foundation skill, you do it because that's the set standard. A finesse skill is something that the experience and the knowledge that that customer service representative will bring to the job, and that can be 5 years experience, 25 years experience. So a finesse skill will be, oh, no problem, while you're waiting for that, were you aware of this X, Y, Z? There are some people that have those extra finesse skills that they will bring to the role, but when we talk about foundation skills, you do it or you don't. There's no in between. It's yes, I've achieved it, no, I haven't. And some of those foundation skills, we don't argue with that. Our standard is very black and white. You did it or you didn't do it. Finesse skill is more about, do I have these skills? Do I want to develop those skills? And that's where we talk about with these standards, why they're so important, because we need to give the staff an idea of what we expect from them. So you do it or you don't do it, and these are the extra personality traits when we talk about finesse skills that you can bring to the role, so you're not robotic and you don't go, hello, how are you doing? These are the extra finesse skills that you will know that there are staff that have that extra flourish that will take slightly longer on a phone call, but they have the personality that makes them very popular, and you know who they are because they get a lot of compliments.
And I also think it's really, really important for the staff members that they have a benchmark. They can see what they haven't done or what they have done. Because if you have two supervisors made in different areas, if you're a large council such as yourselves, Moreton Bay, it means that everyone's working on the same criteria. So if you want to commend people, we're working on a level platform, or you want to discipline people, we're also working on a level platform. Certainly.
If you're worried about numbers and how you actually implement that, stop thinking about the number, think about your culture. Did I get 8 out of 10 and I'm going to be coached, supported, or did I get 8 out of 10 and I'm going to be nailed? That's what it comes down to. So if you're worried about how you're going to use the number, you need to look at how you are using that number and what your team thinks about that number. Do they get an 8 and go, ooh, or do they get an 8 and burst into tears because they know what's coming?
Absolutely.
Your culture.
That's a really, really good point, Bill. And next question, please. I know there are more questions in the room.
My question's for Serbo. When you first were looking at implementing all the KPIs and even standards for you expected from your staff. How long did that take to implement, or was there like a lead-in period, or did you just, when the meeting came, you said from now, the punctuality, the attitude, everything starts now?
With certain behaviours like rocking up to work on time and going on your break on time, that started straight away. I mean, there's no excuse, there's no leading time, you're paid to do a job, and this is what we expect of you. One of these expectations is that you start at 8:15. There's no two ways about that. In relation to setting targets, goals, introducing it to a new system of quality assurance, etc., we started them off very early on that. We weren't really hard on marking them. It was more of a guidance process for the first 3-4 months. Explain to them how it works, and then we set a date and said, look, from this date onwards, you've had enough training, you've had enough exposure to it, you've had enough time to get used to it. The mark's going to mean something from this point on. So there was a lead-in time, but as for acceptance within the team, I would say it took about 12 months to get everyone on board.
Can I add to that, if you mind, Sarah? We got rhythm. I think it's really important to start the way you mean to go on, because I don't think it's fair of people. Now, imagine if Serbo started, and for the first 6 months he's like, yeah, fine, 8:33 is fine with me, 8:25 is fine, and then 6 months into it, suddenly he turns into a dark angel and goes, I want you here at 8:13, that's that. It wouldn't be fair. So it's in some ways, I know I come back to parenting, but in some ways it's like, you've got to be firm, and we've got to be consistent with people. There's nothing worse than inconsistent parenting. Children will exploit you on that, and it's exactly the same with our staff members. We must be consistent. But there's something that I've written here that I was going to do in my speech, but we've changed the format, and that's about our attitude to disciplining staff and working with our staff members. If you have fear that your staff are going to jack up and go, oh no, our manager is telling us off, if you fear them, they will never respect you. And is it better to be loved or respected? It's better to be respected as a manager than it is to be loved. They will learn to love you once they respect you. They will never learn to respect you once they love you, because that way it's like, no, we love our manager lets us do exactly as we please. But then what happens is that they grow up into awful teenagers. They do. So what I think is really important is that you ask yourself as a team leader, you ask yourself as a manager, you ask yourself as a coordinator, do I fear giving development, training and discipline? And if you do fear that, I would ask you to reach out and get some coaching from Serbo, who seem to have no problem with this. I would ask you to get some coaching, either internally or externally, to make sure that you don't fear that anymore. Because if we're going to create a good, strong, positive culture, you've got to have good, strong, positive leadership and management.
The only thing I'd add to that, sometimes we're fearful of managing performance because we're afraid of the person's reaction to it. They're going to call the union, they're going to put a grievance in against us, blah, blah. But some of our fear is around our skill level. And these type of conversations are simply a communication skill, and you can work on it, you can practice it, and you'll get good at it.
If I could take that again on another topic I was going to speak about this afternoon, was manipulation techniques. You see, sometimes we have fear because we are being manipulated, and sometimes you don't even know you're being manipulated. The amount of times I've heard today and yesterday and at other conferences that I attend, isn't it great they always bring food to the service centre, isn't it great someone's always baking, someone's always doing this, someone's always doing that? 8 times out of 10 there's a manipulation technique. If you love me for my food, if I'm always nice to you and I bring you food and I'm 12 minutes late every day, you're not going to tell me off when I hand you a beautiful chocolate cake. You just can't because your mouth's full. I mean, I hand you chocolate cake, you forgive me for all those little transgressions. That is a manipulation technique. Another manipulation technique that I thought of, and this came to light from a conversation I was having with someone, I won't name names or name councils, but they had a young individual, okay, who was getting calls from the older women in the organisation, in the service centre. He was the young male, the only one I think, and he was getting wake-up calls. because he couldn't get there to time on work, so they took it upon themselves to give him wake-up calls and make sure that he got to work on time. That wasn't to help him, that was to disempower you as a leader and as a manager, because he's now more indebted to the hidden leaders in the organisation, in the department, than he is to you. The hidden leaders can then wind him up and, as someone said earlier, turn him into a gun for them. Go and complain about this. Go and complain about that. This person is getting wake-up calls, has no right to say, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. There's another manipulation technique. And the last manipulation technique I was going to talk about was tears. Oh, you know, when someone cries, if I'm having a discipline situation or I need to counsel someone and they say they're going to cry, I say, that's fine, I've got a box of tissues. Simply push the box of tissues across the table and then say nothing. And wait till they finish crying, because 9 times out of 10, those tears are crocodile tears. Go ahead.
Can I just talk to you about the training? When we talk about training and stuff, so particularly when you're bringing in this type of thing, we make the training fun. We bring out the form and we get people to listen to a phone call that we did up, which was a dummy phone call. I have told some people that by the time that we put this phone call together, we did it ourselves. I did it with my trainer. It was the end of the day. It was probably about 5:30 on a Friday afternoon, and there was a little bit of no, not whine, crying. So by the end of the day, the call became, hi, I'm sure, and I'm sure. Now, the fun part about doing that phone call, and this was a bad phone call because we wanted our staff, we'd gone through the standards with them in the training, but we wanted them to assess it on the form so they weren't terrified. Because what terrifies people is that someone's going to sit there and they're going to score them and they don't know, they won't show you what's on the form. When you do the training, show them the form. We took them through and we let them listen to this dummy call that we made up, and we let them score. Then we talked about it. We said, well, what do you think? Did they hit the standard? And the conversation around the table was, oh yeah, that's fine. No, that wasn't fine. What's the standard? Let's go back. What's your standard? We made it a fun, entertaining, engaging, and they got to get their fears out on the table. So when you talk about putting in these new types of things that might be scary, consider to make it fun for them.
Can I interject on that? I hate to disagree with you in a way, Tina. I don't believe in fun. And I know you might find that strange from me, but I don't. My personal belief about fun is a byproduct of success and a positive behaviours and a positive culture. That's where fun comes from. As a facilitator and a trainer for a very long time, I never walk into a room saying we're going to have fun. Because I think that devalues what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve. I'll say it again. I think that fun is a byproduct of a successful culture and positive behaviours.
I disagree with you.
I know. That's why we've got a panel.
I know. But I'm going to somewhere.
Yeah, look, I think it's time for a question, Rome. I'm just gone to sleep here listening to you at the moment. Look, I'd like to ask a question of Kathleen and Bill. I want to take, Kathleen, a statement you made there earlier this afternoon. You said people identifying very strongly with the local community. I do agree with that with amalgamations. I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to ask you. With any amalgamation, there's a certain loss of community of interest or loss of identity with small towns, and I'm talking about small towns with only hundreds of population. The two questions I'd like to ask you is, how have you overcome this in your amalgamation? And that may be through having local area committees or like something similar to that. And the second question is, do you have wards for elected members, or do you have an open council, and how many councillors do you have?
We've got 11 councillors and 1 mayor, and each councillor has a division, and the divisions range, I think, in size from 18,000 to 22,000 residents, or ratepayers electors in the divisions. As far as community of interest goes, I'm not aware that we've ever really done anything along those lines. That's something probably far outside of our scope, even though we said we had no scope. But yeah, I'm not aware of anything, but I do know that ratepayers were very aware of what was being given to this district or that district. The example I used last night was that Redcliffe had a strong connection with the Bee Gees, and they created a Bee Gees Way, and they had Barry Gibb come out and it was a big thing. Barry Gibb came out and he opened up Bee Gees Way. The next thing you hear in the local paper is that Caboolture has a very strong connection with Keith Urban. He actually grew up in, and so Caboolture now they want a statue of Keith Urban, and they want this and they want that. So you do get this jealousy between us, but I'm not aware of council actually doing anything to promote those communities of interest.
Possibly a little different to some of your own circumstances is that our communities, something like the previous Caboolture Shire, would have already had the communities of Bribie Island, Woodford and Caboolture was seen to be the centre. When we amalgamated, there was still Bribie Island, Woodford and Caboolture, so the communities actually didn't feel that they had been left out because they were always sort of standalone. Little tribes still existed. What actually happens is that whole thing of, like a common enemy is what unites you. So all of a sudden, Bribie, Woodford, Caboolture all arguing over who would get what, suddenly became, it's now all about Pine Rivers and Redcliffe. So, but we're very different in some instances in regards to, we don't perhaps have that whole town type issue that some of the smaller councils would have.
What about the number of your councillors, and you had an open ward system?
No, we've got 10 divisions. They have 10 distinctive divisions.
But we did go from about 24 councillors to 10.
Yep.
So the Redcliffe City in particular, I think, was 11 councillors, and it went to 2.
Thank you.
And those divisions aren't actually along the old council lines either. Like the Redcliffe, the two divisions in Redcliffe don't fully encompass Redcliffe. So when they drew those electoral divisions, they weren't going, oh, that was the old Redcliffe, so we'll keep it within those boundaries. Yeah. So it was quite interesting.
Okay.
Did they appoint a particular person to oversee the transition, an administrator? Was everybody just stood down and in limbo for a little while there?
Prior to I think it was actually prior to the amalgamation, they put together a transitional committee, and there was a transitional structure. There was a CEO that was appointed. That CEO was appointed for a 12-month period. And it actually is CEO. So, so we had a transitional committee, we had a transitional structure put in place, and probably within the first month or two, they got serious and they actually put in a proper structure. All staff members got a letter to say, what their position was and who they reported to and what their division was. That happened within the first, I'd say, probably not 2 months, probably 6 months. That actually gave us a bit of certainty. You may not have liked where you were. You may not have liked what your position was called, but at least you knew who you were and where you were.
And at what point in time did you have to reapply for positions?
People like myself didn't actually have to reapply. If you're in a situation where our CSOs didn't have to apply for their positions because there were CSO positions, what would have happened at certain levels in the organisation, there would have been 3 supervisors of accounts payable. Those people would have had to apply for their position. There would have been 3 paymasters. There would have been 3 whatever. In some cases there weren't. In some cases there may have only been 1 manager of whatever. So, and that all happened in the early stages.
Just so you know, we went from 2,800 staff when the water and sewage business left us. We went from about 2,400 staff, and a result of continuing, refining of the organisation, we have 1,700 staff. Customer service itself has lost 20 positions, but I'd like to make it very clear, we actually didn't lose any position. Through the efficiencies, we were actually able to surrender every single one of those positions. Our records department went from 25 staff to 10, and there's more space in there to go down further.
I mean, it was obvious that your amalgamation is very successful, and I can see why. Why are the de-amalgamations happening now in areas around you? Is that because they didn't do it successfully, or?
It's probably politics in many instances, and there would be some that would question the original decisions to include some of those councils together, and there were then some very well organised communities, and I'm sure there would be relationships and all sorts of things going on. But look, good luck to them. My heart goes out to somebody like the Sunshine Coast Regional Council, who amalgamated, went through the pain that we did, lost their water and sewage business, and then had to de-amalgamate. I mean, if there's a want for your soul to leave your body, it's what's just happened to us.
Anyone? Are we done?
Yep. All done?
We're done? Looks like we're done.
Can I just take this opportunity to thank our speakers and thank our panel? Thank you very much for coming up. Thank you for answering the questions, and thank you for being so honest. If I can say, Bill and Kathleen, you've been exceptionally honest in what you've been talking about. It's been wonderful. Sir, you've done a really great job in being honest in what you've shown us that you've done at Canada Bay, which is great. Tina from Townsville, you're always honest with us. You tell us just the way it is, which is great. So I really appreciate that, because I know you're within local government and you put yourself on the line when you do that. Wonderful. Thank them once again. And thank you very much, Carol, for coming in and spending time with us. Thanks for watching our broadcast on the National Local Government Customer Service Network channel. I hope you got lots of hints and tips and tricks that you can use at your council. The case studies were great, the information's been great. I hope you're enjoying it, and don't forget to visit our website. See you next time.